Hello, my name is Anna and I love trying vintage recipes. So today I'm trying a recipe for scalloped tomatoes and zucchini from 1981. This recipe comes to us from old-fashioned tomato recipes from Bear Wallow books. I'll talk a little bit more about this book later. I said this recipe is from 1981, but the title of this book is Old-Fashioned Tomato Recipes, so I do suspect that this recipe is probably older than 1981, but I'm just kind of working with the information I have here. I thought maybe this recipe would be appropriate for this time of year because it's the time when you could possibly be swimming in both tomatoes and zucchini. It seems like there are certain times of year when you would absolutely kill for a good tomato, and then other times of year that if you grow tomatoes yourself, you're absolutely drowning in them. So this uses both, and I thought, why not? This sounds like a really good summer side dish. This recipe requires 3 cups of peeled, chopped fresh tomatoes. So here's how I peeled them. I took my tomatoes and cut a shallow X into the bottom side of the tomato, not the stem end. And then I had my pan of boiling water already ready to go, and then I also had a bowl with ice water in it. So I dropped a tomato into the boiling water, let it stay there for about 30 seconds, and then with a slotted spoon, removed the tomato to the ice bath and let it sit there for a little bit. When the tomato was cool to the touch, I could put it on my cutting board, and then you can see how easily the skin is peeling away just with my fingers. So if you're gonna make this recipe, I would advise doing that ahead of time. So I've got my buttered casserole dish. Arrange half of the tomatoes evenly in the bottom of the dish. So I have my prepped tomatoes here, peeled and chopped. So we'll do half of those. These were so juicy. I got these tomatoes at a little local produce stand. And oh my word, when I was chopping them up, juice everywhere. So here's where we run into a little bit of an issue in the recipe. The ingredients list does call for a sliced onion, but it doesn't say where it goes. It doesn't mention it ever again in the recipe. So I'm just gonna place that sliced onion, half of it, on top of the tomatoes. That seems like the most logical place for it to go, so I'm making a guess here. And yes, this dish is a little bit ratatouille-esque. Maybe not as fancy or composed. A little bit rustic. We're gonna move that aside because I have to slice up this zucchini right here, also from the local farm stand. So I'm supposed to arrange the zucchini slices, half of them, on top of the tomatoes. So now I'm making a little crumb and cheese layer. So I have about half a cup of breadcrumbs here. I was about a tablespoon short on breadcrumbs, so I just crunched up about a tablespoon of cornflakes. If you wonder what these yellow flecks are, that's what they are. I had to improvise, I'm so sorry. I have a clove of garlic, and then half a cup of grated cheese. This is just cheddar cheese, what they called for in the recipe. 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, and 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. Just mix that together. Half of this mixture goes on top of this part of the casserole. Oh wow, it is very fragrant with that garlic. So now we're kind of repeating the same thing that we started with. The rest of the tomatoes, spread those around. And my onions, just the rest of those. Again, I'm guessing here because it doesn't say where to put them in the instructions. Sometimes, I think especially with vintage recipes, or handwritten recipes, you just have to make a guess. Is there something special that you like to make with zucchini when you have an overabundance? I know a lot of people go zucchini bread or zucchini relish or something like that. I'm a fan of just plain old sauteed zucchini myself. But yeah, if you have zucchini recipes, tell me about them. I was worried that this casserole was going to be too large, and I am finding out that that is not the case. Yeah, it's pretty much just the right size here. That looks really good. Summer abundance in a dish. We're gonna sprinkle it with the rest of our crumbs. Cheese and garlic. Oh yeah, I'm in. And then of course, we're gonna dot our casserole with some butter. So I love when casseroles call for this, doing crumbs and then dotting with butter, because it makes this amazing, crispy, buttery crust on the top that is just so good. So there it is. So now I have to bake this in a 375-degree oven for 35 to 40 minutes. Let's talk about old-fashioned tomato recipes. This book was published in 1981 and comes to us from Wallow books. These little books might look a little familiar to you. I tend to think of them as things that I find in gift shops. So I'm thinking you're in a tourist area and there's a little gift shop there. They might have something like this, or like Cracker Barrel, or perhaps like a garden center or something like that. And I do have a few of these in my collection. I have old shaker recipes. I'm really excited about this one, old-fashioned pumpkin recipes. This one is definitely coming out for Halloween. And then we come to old-fashioned candy recipes. And if you've been with me for quite a while, like within my first few months of making videos and publishing them, you might remember this book. And for those of you who don't, I will tell you a little story. This book, I know this is not the book I cooked from, but this book was also from the early 80s, and it has an original price tag on it from the Garden Patch for $2.15. This is the book that I accidentally stole when I was 4 years old. I was at the Garden Patch with my mom. The Garden Patch was like a little garden center, and they had like gifts and food items and things like that as well, including these cookbooks. And my little 4-year-old mind thought that this was on a rack full of free pamphlets, so I just grabbed it and walked right out of the store with it. My mom was horrified. She did take this back in and pay for it. But apparently I was obsessed with cookbooks from the age of 4. Does this count as like my very first cookbook that I ever collected? That ended my little baby crime spree, you know. So this one has a lot of interesting memories attached to it, but it is also from Wallow books. But back to old-fashioned tomato recipes. I love the illustration on the front with this like fruit and vegetable cart. I found this kind of recently, actually, within the last few months at Half Price Books. Wallow books does seem to still be in operation today, and it seems that they mostly sell their books wholesale to places that would resell them, like gift shops. Oh, one thing I wanted to point out, I think this is like their little mascot guy, this bear. I just think he's very cute. All of their books are pretty, you know, they have right around 30 pages, so they're pretty slim, but they do pack a nice punch with some good recipes. I'll just share a few of those with you. This book happens to have a section on green tomatoes as well, so not just your fried green tomatoes, but although they do have those. You've got green tomato jam, green tomato dill pickles, green tomato chutney. So if you've got a whole bunch of green tomatoes, this book has enough recipes for you to use those up, I think. Green tomato Betty. So this looks like it is a dessert. It looks kind of like apple brown Betty, only made with green tomatoes. I was very tempted to make that one, but I didn't have green tomatoes. I had red tomatoes. So lots of different types of tomato soups, hot soups, and chilled, which would be great right now because the temperatures are climbing currently. Oh, we had to have the jellied tomato mold. We couldn't go without one of those. And there's a little opening section even on peeling tomatoes, canning tomatoes, freezing tomatoes. You know, if you've got an abundance of tomatoes, there's no need to let them go to waste because this book pretty much has your back. Like I said, it is called Old-Fashioned Tomato Recipes, so although it was published in the 80s, these are probably some recipes that have been passed down and are from before 1981. There's a little section on cakes and puddings, so of course we have the spicy tomato nut cake, tomato date cake. I mean, when you have so many tomatoes that you just don't know what to do, you make them into tomato pudding. Have you had tomato pudding? Because I'm very curious about it. It seems like a bread pudding made with tomato puree. Could be interesting. Doesn't seem like it's too sweet either. Oh no, I lied. There's a cup of brown sugar in it. I missed that ingredient. So like a sweet tomato pudding. I don't hate the sound of that. Might have to make that one for a video. We'll see. If you want me to make tomato pudding, please let me know in the comments. But yeah, if you see any of these little Wallow books, I've picked up several at Half Price Books, or if you even see them sort of like out and about when you're visiting new places, I think they're worth a look. They really do have a lot of good recipes in them, and these seem to be kind of like tried and true old-fashioned tomato recipes. That crispy, crunchy topping. It smells incredible. I am very ready to give this a taste. It's a little juicy. I mean, the tomatoes were very juicy, and the zucchini probably has a lot of liquid in it as well. It smells good. It smells delicious. You know, I'm gonna just kind of cut this piece of zucchini in half. I think if I did this again, I would dice the zucchini like I did the tomatoes. It says to slice them, but I think it's just a little bit more manageable if you keep the tomatoes and the zucchini sort of in the same shape. Okay. It's very good, very summery. I got a little bite of that crumb mixture with it and it's perfect. This is not a bad way to get your veggies. The only change that I can really think of is, well, two changes. Dice the zucchini the way that you did the tomatoes. It's maybe not as visually pleasing, but I think it would bake a little bit more evenly. And I would maybe up the temperature a little bit just to get it a little bit more brown on the top. I baked it at 375 degrees for 40 minutes. I went the full 40. I would maybe go 400 degrees for 45 minutes. I think this could bake a little bit longer. The zucchini is just like a little tender crisp. I like it that way. I know some people would prefer to have it a little bit softer, but you might notice that I finished almost this entire plate, so it must be good, right? Great way to use your garden vegetables. I don't have a garden, so I don't have garden vegetables, but hey, if you want to drop off some tomatoes and zucchini at my house, I'll probably make this. If you love recipes and cookbooks from the 1980s, I have an entire playlist and I will link it in the description down below. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I post videos about food, vintage cookbooks, and retro recipes every week. Thanks again, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.